Scanning for audio.
Welcome to another Tin Dog podcast in the summer of BLAKES7. Ah yes, we're already at episode 6. Episode 6 of course being Seek, Locate, Destroy. Blake's really throwing himself into this whole being a terrorist thing. Despite the fact that last time's story, consisted mainly of messing about with a bunch of illegal clones. We've got to get back to the root cause, the important bits of all this. And this story marks the introduction of, we'll get to that in a minute. Blake's not very good at counting. Now, he knows the program's called BLAKES7. He knows that there's 6 of them. Unless you're counting the computer, which I would. Which means that when ORAC turns out, it's BLAKES8. That's if you count himself. It gets very confusing. So if you're not counting himself at the moment, it's still BLAKES5. Or BLAKES6 if you count the computer. So if you count both computers, doesn't matter. So, Blake's decided to launch this raid, this sort of Enigma-style raid where you'd get the Federation's communication computer. Yes, it's a kind of a whole Enigma-style thing. The computer itself looks like a very long piece of metal. Not very exciting, but bizarrely it actually does look like a component that you'd get in a PC these days. Blake likes hurting the Federation in the communication centres, as we've already discussed a couple of podcasts ago. But this whole plan seems to have more of the air of Avon about it, on the grounds that it's a computer component that they're going to nick. So, they teleport down, there's a bit of antics, mainly involving the world's worst robot. The security robot, owned by the Federation, is absolute pants. It launches a flamethrower at a flappy piece of rope. It is terrible to look at. It is ludicrous, and yet I'd still rather have one of those than an android. Robots should look like robots. We'd feel better about that. And no matter how much money you throw at a robot that looks like this, it's still going to look, pants. Let's not dwell on it. Perhaps the Federation had some money left over in some sort of arts funding budget, and that's why this thing ended up looking the way it did. Perhaps it didn't. So yes, it's a botched, bungled attempt at blowing something up. And then they decide to put some explosives in the communications room, nick the component, and then teleport out of there, give themselves all lovely back slaps, and then flying off in the opposite direction after they've had some missiles fired at them. The missiles in question do not turn into a rather surprised-looking whale and a bowl of petunias. No, they eventually just run out of fuel and blow themselves up, as opposed to just running out of fuel and drifting a bit. Callie, however, has lost her teleportation bracelet. She's lying in some rubble. And by rubble I mean BBC rubble, which means under a bookcase. She's lost her bracelet, which means she isn't transported back. We now have a rule for transporters. They need to have some sort of bracelet, and the bracelet needs to be attached to someone. If the bracelet isn't attached, the bracelet doesn't transport, which seems odd. But basically, she's unconscious. Meanwhile, somewhere else in the galaxy, we've got Mr. Travis. Except not yet. We've got a character who is synonymous with BLAKES7. Yes, we're 6 episodes in and we finally get to meet Servalan. Jacqueline Pierce was a phenomenal actress. She was also a bit of a stunner, which may or may not have got in the way of some work. But once Servalan turns up, it's a whole different ballgame. This series goes up a notch and down a notch simultaneously, because no matter how well you write her, she's always going to be a version of a pantomime villain. So you've got some establishing shots, some chat about how good Avon's doing. Blake's doing with his little terrorist things. Word of mouth spreading. I don't think it would work quite as well these days if he'd been accused of the same sort of thing. So perhaps people think that the Federation is intrinsically corrupt, rather than just with the appearance of being nice and dandy on the surface. Servalan is chatting to Nyder from Genesis of the Daleks, without of course realising that it's just the same actor, about Blake in general, and she's decided to take out Blake using one of her tools at her discretion. The tool in question is Travis. Travis is a very tall, very leather-clad, very robot-handed, very eye-patch-wearing villain. So yeah, in a sense, it could be argued that Servalan is kind of Judi Dench's M, and that Travis would be, well, not exactly James Bond, but he is a maverick agent sent out after a terrorist. So you can see this whole thing from the other way around. You can see if Blake is a terrorist and these people are the government, you've got Travis as Bond. Perhaps, perhaps not. I mean, let's face it, Servalan is basically evil, and you couldn't get anyone more signpostedly evil as Travis if you put a big T-shirt on him. It's a very nice bit of plot where you switch from one character to another character as they both describe the activities, where Blake is the person who thinks he shot Travis. This has never been mentioned before. Now, Blake is down to have killed someone, and that was never mentioned in his original trial. It's just not gone into. Travis is not seen by anyone on his own side as even remotely honourable. Yes, he might believe in total war, but what that actually means is that he's just an idiot who wants to shoot people. The acting is brilliant. It's so good that you just don't notice it. So there you've got this great new storyline. Now, I haven't even mentioned the fact that it's called Cyclokit Destroy, which is what Daleks seem to wander around shouting a lot. Thank you, Terry. You could use some more imagination if you wanted to. Well, it's your call. It's your call, it's your show. You do whatever you want. So Servalan's been sent out to take out Blake with Travis. Travis is the weapon. He's also not thick. So he's got Calais in. So when he arrives to investigate, he realises that something might have gone from that communications room. Now, originally, during this whole shenanigans with Travis, this off-scene thing, this thing never seen in flashback, which would have made more sense if we had seen flashbacks, thank you. You don't get to see the flashbacks. You just get told about it. Bad, bad television making. Show, don't tell. Even then, that was the case. So in the end, there's a whole runaround where Blake has to rescue Callie, set up a trap, but Blake's got there first in exactly the same way that Travis got there first in the original incarnation or meeting. Yes, it's kind of nice and kind of circular. You've now got a new villain. He's had a massive build-up. He's got massive social problems, and he's also got bits missing off him. Yes, the whole business of why don't you just shoot each other a la Dr. Evil in the first Austin Powers film, or was it the second one? Well, that's always going to be something you ignore. So, a decent enough introduction for two of the main villains, but you really would like to have seen more flashbacks, more business, more fun. I liked it, of course I liked it, it's BLAKES7, but not as great as the earlier promise is showing. Hoping that it picks up from this point onwards, but however, knowing what the next story is not good. And the fact that Travis has already got a robot arm, well, it lets you shoot it off at every single time you see him. Bad jewellery and far too much black, but that's fine. Right, I'll bid you farewell and I'll speak to you very soon, either about BLAKES7 or Doctor Who. Either way, it's all going to be very nice and fluffy. Be seeing you. You've been listening to the Tin Dog Podcast, available on RSS, iTunes, Stitcher, Audio Boom and Tumblr. Doctor Who and its associated works are copyright of the BBC. No infringement is intended. You can contact the show, donate, buy merchandise or find out more about my other projects by visiting the Tin Dog Podcast homepage and clicking on the links. The Tin Dog Podcast is a founder member of the Doctor Who Podcast Alliance. On the 5th of September 2015, Hooverville will return. The biggest little Doctor Who convention in the whole of the UK is proud to present several fantastic guests. First off is the Colin Baker, a man who needs absolutely no introduction. Guests also include the author Jenny Colgan, responsible for Dark Horizons and Time Trips, Richard Marson, the man behind JNT, The Life and Scandalous Times, and the brand new book Drama and Delight, the biography of Verity Lambert, Dan Starkey, the man behind the mask when it comes to Commander Strax, and of course Ian the Elf in the Christmas special, Terence Dix, one of the men behind the Third Doctor and more Target novelisations than you can shake a stick at, the actor David Benson, from Robot of Sherwood, Iris Wildtime and the Scarifiers, Matthew Waterhouse, yes, Adrake, Michael Pickwood, the current production manager on Doctor Who, and Karen Louise Hollis, author of The Man Behind the Master, the biography of Anthony Ainley. More guests may be added, but either way, that's a fantastic lineup. Visit the Derby Quad website on www.derbyquad.co.uk and follow the links. Saturday the 5th of September 2015. See you there.
Snyder.